Hey everybody, Michael Matt with something just a little bit different tonight. For the first time, Candace Owens and her husband George Farmer, I think it's for the first time, as far as we can tell, sat for an interview with us at this year's Catholic Identity Conference. It turned out to be a highlight of the weekend. It was fantastic. This is the CIC out in Pittsburgh. So in the following interview with yours truly, we cover a variety of different topics, including the future of Candace Owens' show, the role of big tech in free speech, how to juggle family life, children, the fight for truth, all this stuff. The bogus charge of antisemitism, we get into that a little bit. So much more. It was really, really fun. It was informative. But most of all, and this is why we decided to go ahead and release it, make it available right away off the on-demand package, is because it offers so much hope. And it's a pretty dark moment in time right now. We're going to get into some stuff later on in the weekend with a leak out of the Trump camp that's deeply disturbing. People have just been sadly introduced to the new and improved Melania Trump and her pro-abortion stance. Nothing surprising at all. That's what we've been talking about for the past few months down here. The demons are at work. But in any case, it's a really dark time. And this interview, some of the things that happened out of the CIC, the alliances that were formed, speak to the future, and the future is looking actually quite bright, quite positive. So as you watch this now, this interview, so I want to just slide it out before we get into any dark stuff later in the weekend in a different program. As you watch this, just keep in mind that these two young people are Catholic converts, one a very recent convert. They're a young married couple. They have 3 little kids, little babies at home, and yet they're risking everything to stand up for God, truth, family, and even the social kingship of Jesus Christ. And this is the future, friends. I'm going to explain all of this over the course of the next couple of weeks. It really, really is the future. There's a turning point. There's a major change. The old political order is beginning to look, smell, and stink old. And there's something new coming out, and I'm really excited about it. So, and again, people like Candace Owens and her husband George, they got nothing to gain in the worldly sense from what they're doing. But they got a lot to lose by publicly standing up for Christ the King at probably the most Christophobic period in human history. So I was truly inspired by their knowledge, by their humor. Their sense of humor was fantastic. Their obvious commitment to the social kingship of Jesus Christ, the Latin Mass. Both of these people are committed defenders of the Latin Mass. And just in general to restoring all things in Christ. How did this happen? Where did this come from? Because you know what? They actually have the following, the massive following, and the resources and the connections to lead millions of people out of the darkness right now and into the light of Christ. So I'm much more excited about this than anything else going on in politics at the moment. This is a big deal, not just these two, but this trend, which is trending all over the world. So be of good cheer, friends. God is sending some really powerful recruits. I know. I just spent the weekend with them. Good things are happening. As you see right now, certainly one of the most encouraging interviews that I have ever personally conducted. CIC, by the way, was a huge success. We're going to get to that over the next couple of days as well. This is the largest, for those of you who are new to the underground, the largest annual conference of its kind in the States. It was massively successful, standing room only, sold out months ago. And all the talks, by the way, are available on demand from Remnant TV. So check this link right down below. Watch them all, share them, tell your friends about them. We're already taking early registration, I understand, for the CIC next year.
Yeah.
There's so many requests. So many people want to come back. They want to tell their friends. So we're going to sell out, I would think, quite early, God willing, if there is a next year. It's going to sell out really quickly. It's going to be in Pittsburgh once again at the end of September. So nothing more to say about this, friends, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoy this interview as much as I did and as I do. It's my pleasure to present to you now Candace Owens and George Farmer at the Catholic Identity Conference 2024.
I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to just have a very informal conversation. Both Candace and George have got to get on a plane tonight still, so they literally whisked in here to be with us and to form this beautiful friendship and alliance. So I just wanted to ask a couple of questions that I think people, you're you're trending, so there's a lot of people that are especially Catholic folks, traditional Catholics, that are really curious. And I guess I don't know if I have a clip. We had a clip from you the other night. You were on the Neil Oliver show, which was just fantastic. Let's see if there was just a little clip that I wanted to jump off if we have it available.
Yeah, well, it's one of the reasons why I was baptized Catholic. I think they've been holding a candle for a very long time. It's why Catholics are so hated. And even that was a very careful, evil operation to dissuade, and I'm speaking about America, but obviously also in the UK, to dissuade the West against the Catholic Church because they know real history. They've been keeping it for thousands of years. And yes, it has always been a holy war.
You went on from there. We didn't have it all there, but it seems to me that one of the main reasons people don't do what you are doing right now is for fear of the kind of name-calling, drag through the mud, end of your career, really persecution. I'm not trying to make you a hero. I think you've explained what your motivation is. But I wonder if you could share something, because you've got 3 children. You're a married woman, and they're coming after your family. They're doing everything. What is it? How would you advise someone to put some of those very real and very human concerns aside and to continue to speak the truth? Because obviously that's what we all need and must do, but it's not easy. Can you give us an idea?
Yeah, I think it's the wrong appearance that I do it alone. I mean, my security comes because I know that they can't take away anything from me that actually matters. They can't take away my faith. They can't take away my husband. He's stuck with me, right? And because we are so fortified as a couple, and that we put Christ in the center of our relationship, the threats don't mean anything. So you really have to put into perspective what it is they're threatening to take. It's money, right? It's money. And there are so many people who operate out of fear of losing money. And for me, and this is again realizing all of the things in my past that I thought were curses, that were blessings. I grew up poor, so I've already been broke. I'm not fearful of that. That's not an unknown that I'm fearful of. It really wasn't that bad. It was fun, kind of, trying to figure out how I was going to survive. And so I think for me, I always just take it to its natural end. Like, what is it actually that they're threatening to take? Okay, they're threatening to take away your money. Do you believe that you can survive without making money this way or that way? And my answer to that is always yes, because I don't worship money. So. Mm-hmm.
And so even there must be something, a sort of liberating quality to that even your children. I mean, I think one of the sad things that's happening, even in the pro-life movement with what's happening in politics, is young people are being robbed of the crusade. And I wonder if you realize, like in the traditional Catholic world, how many families, big families with lots of kids, how many parents were able to keep their children in the fold of the faith due to the fact that they gave them a crusade. And I wonder if you could just follow up on that a little bit. Is giving your children the crusade, the fight, also a means by which both of you would say that you also hope that that'll keep your children close to God through this, a very difficult time for families?
Yeah, I mean, I think raising one's children in the faith is one of the most important things you can possibly. I mean, it is our duty as parents. It's our God-given duty as parents to raise our children in the faith. Mm-hmm. I was just saying this earlier, but basically that the sooner that you start introducing your children to traditional Catholicism, the harder it is for the system to brainwash your children against it.
That's it.
Which means that, and as soon as they brainwash your children against it, you have an infantry soldier on the other side fighting against you. Mm-hmm. Which just means that at the end of the day, we're fighting another one of our own opponents. So the children need to be steeped in the faith from the very earliest days. And that is, in this country, I would say it's actually very encouraging to see so many traditional families homeschooling their children, taking them out of the education system, saying they don't need to go to college, which is very different to how it is in Europe. Mm-hmm. But over here, there are plenty of families who are really steeping their children in the faith from a very young age. And that's the best education they can have. Mm-hmm. Because if I think of my own education, I think of Candace's education, both brought up in very different educational systems, but both fundamentally with the heartstring of the education system is modernism, it's liberalism, it's progressive. It may be framed in different ways in different educational styles, but it's still trying to teach you the heresy that basically there is a different God but Christ. Mm-hmm. And so if you have that at your heart from a very young age, in whatever manifestation it takes, you will always be fighting against, you'll be fighting against your own children by the time they're 18. Mm-hmm. And that's a very bad outcome.
You mentioned, I can't remember, I guess it was in one of our conversations setting up this this event, that you're interested or you're willing to go in front of the camera and talk. It's not just Candace doing that, but your provision was on the condition that I speak about the things that matter most, and that is matters or issues of faith. And I thought that was interesting because I know you also had a very interesting take, and everybody's been dancing around this, but you said something recently that I thought was really interesting, and that is what the other side has is a religion. It is a religion. So we've been talking about abortion being the blood anti-sacrament of this new religion, but you put it in a way that I thought was really, really interesting, that it's literally, not figuratively, this is not just a pejorative thing to say or hyperbole. Literally, it's become an evil religion. Would you care to comment?
Yeah. When Candace and I first met, she often asked me why I studied theology as an undergraduate and why I was brought up in this, why I was interested in faith, why I converted to Catholicism at quite a young age. And that's because faith rules everything. It is at the heart of everything we do. We think we're rational creatures, but rationalism actually true rationality, if you believe in God, you are truly fulfilling your human mind. That is what we are designed to do. So if we are not aligned with God, we are simply misaligned, which means that we will seek God somewhere else, right? And this is the nature of the human spirit, is to always seek God somewhere else if we are not aligned with the true faith. What our society has done now is simply corrupt the vision of God that the church teaches into a new religion. And this is what has been done since before, pagan times. I mean, this is the same thing. And if you look at what we have now, we have a liturgical calendar. You have Juneteenth. You have Pride Month. You have International Women's Day. You have all these nonsense celebrations of days and months, which is exactly the same as what the church used to give us. Every time you walk into a building which has a pride flag on it, you are walking into a temple of the new religion. This is what they want. And if you do not profess unbridled doctrinal allegiance to the new religion, you will be excommunicated, because you must sign up to the dogmatic principles of that faith. Otherwise, you're out. And that is why the increasing purity test gets stricter and stricter. You must agree with this. You must agree with this. Anyone who questions the narrative will be kicked out of the church of woke. And that is, and then it goes into all kinds of other things. Then you have different dogmatic beliefs. You have different doctrinal schools. You have to be an eco-zealot. Okay, well, what happens if I don't sign up to that? Well, I'm going to be kicked out of that dogmatic school. Okay. And there's a theology behind it. And the theology gets more and more absurd and more progressively ridiculous. What does it mean to care about the environment? It means at the end of the day, in this new church of woke, that if you don't sign up to the full dogmatic principles of this faith, you will be excommunicated, but at the same time, you cannot travel to see your family, you cannot have any children, you can't eat meat, you can do nothing. So you must sit in your house being told what to believe constantly with no freedom. And this is the new religion. This is the new faith. You sign up to it, we all opt into it, and it is just the same as a religion. It is no different. And of course, it's complete misalignment from the true faith. The true faith, of course, being the Catholic Church. That's it.
I was going to share with them the Sam Harris anecdote. I think that was the moment that I realized that there's no one more faithful than an atheist, actually. He was an extremely popular podcaster named Sam Harris. He was a big name when I was first getting into podcasting, and people loved him. He was like a Stanford graduate, had all the, he's intelligent, he speaks about these issues. And then COVID hit. And this person who, for a living, debates people, he's a committed atheist, and he debates people about atheism and tries to bring people over to the atheist side, completely went insane. I mean, there's no other way to say it. He went insane. And I didn't know him. I knew him peripherally through some friends, and I was like tweeting about going out, and he tweeted at me, and it went trending, like, you're going to get people killed. And my friend was like, don't engage with him on Twitter. You guys should get on the phone and speak to one another. And I was heading to an event. George and I were in the car in Texas. I was heading to an event to shake hands, speak to people. right at the beginning of this thing, and I got on the phone with him, and it was disturbing. I mean, he was basically like, there's going to be gurneys in the street. You know, if you go outside and keeping my kids inside, you don't understand. He was like, I have spoken to doctors. I went to Stanford. I know that this thing is going to hit us, and there's just going to be dead people lined up inside. And I just respectfully was like, okay, yeah. And he started speaking to me more about the experts. And I hung up the phone, and I looked at George, and I said, you know, that man is very unwell. We just went inside and started shaking hands. And he never really came back from that. And I really thought about Sam Harris in a big way, and atheism in a big way because of this. And what is it's sort of an inversion of the Bible. Like, they believe so much in this temporal moment, they will sacrifice anything. Like, he just doesn't want to die, right? What bigger fear could he have than of death when he's like, this is it? He'll do anything. He's converted, as George said, the gods now are the media. The journalists say 6 feet social distancing, he does it. You know, the doctors say wear a mask, save lives, he does it. He doesn't even think. He follows these instructions. It's this very humanist agenda, and really that it's a Satanist agenda. They believe in humans more than anything else. And so I'll never forget how disturbed I was by I don't think he came out of his house for like a year, you know? And so all of this, because they are so in the moment, and they will sacrifice anything. And you do recognize that this is a religion. It's the Antichrist. Like, it's.
And just to build off that, look at the way in which they defend their holy sacraments. Abortion is a holy sacrament for this church. It is a holy sacrament. If only we Catholics were so strident in our defense of the Mass when they closed the churches during COVID. And yet here we are. And yet in England, you know, the Conference of Bishops make no statement, basically, about the fact that the churches are being closed. And yet here they are, as soon as Roe versus Wade is overturned, which did not even outlaw abortion. He simply reverted the right of the states to choose. As Justice Kavanaugh wrote, this court does not have an opinion about abortion. We can all pray that there might have been a more rigorous ruling, but the fact is that the Church of Woke was out the next day tearing down cities, saying this is our sacrament, this is our right to, you know, this is my body, which of course is a great perversion of this is my body, right? And so this is their holy sacrament. And they defend it as we should defend the Mass. But they actually defend it with more vigor.
It's disturbing because at the same time they really are trying to ban us from practicing our own. Oh, you're experiencing this right now. I experienced it a long time ago. What they really mean when they say you're anti-Semitic, especially when you come to the Catholic faith as a high-profile person, and especially if you gravitate towards the traditional Catholicism, what they're saying is that for 1,965 years, the Catholic Church was anti-Semitic. So in your adherence to that, you're just giving yourself away. So essentially what they're saying is that all the saints, all the popes, all the doctrines, all the dogmas, even the Latin Mass itself is anti-Semitic. So I think it's very important, and I wonder if one or both of you could comment on that. Be careful of this idea that you're an anti-Semite ends the discussion, because like you just said, they're throwing that at Catholics now. Mel Gibson found this out when he tried to make a movie about the Passion of Jesus Christ. What did they say? You're an anti-Semite, the scriptures are anti-Semitic. So obviously we, as Catholics, Christ from the cross said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. As Catholics, true anti-Semitism or hatred of Jews is mortally sinful. But that's not what they're talking about. They're talking about barring us or banning us or prohibiting us from practicing our own religion while they've created a new one.
Well, and actually this is quite interesting, and obviously there was outrage about it, gratefully, but you saw the bill that they tried to pass in the House about expanding the definition of anti-Semitism, and it even included like modifying speech about Christ's death. It was unbelievable. And people were outraged and said this is the fact that the ADL even put it in writing is what was really absurd. And they said this is going to be the new broader definition of anti-Semitism. And it essentially, if you really looked at it, meant being a Christian out loud, you know? And so what it's really about, and this works in other name-calling arenas as well, so it's whether you're talking about racism, and they're like, well, this is really about conquering racism. No, it's about modifying. It's slight modifications, slight little, well, I understand that you guys think Christ is king, but there's a time and a place for that, right? So let me explain to you how it can sometimes be anti-Semitic when you say it. And this is kind of the game that they play. It's a long game, right? And so if you get people through this emotional conditioning, calling them names like that's transphobic, that's racist, that's anti-Semitic, don't you see how when you say that it hurts me? Don't you see how, and I remember actually I was debating a rabbi and he said that, I realized that we might be watching different movies, he said, but the Passion of the Christ, like, don't you see? And I was like, no, I don't see. It's historical. Like, I actually don't see. And it's important to say that and to be bold. As a culture in general, we've gotten so afraid to offend people that to claim offense has become a superpower. It's a superpower. I will just, if I want to win every argument, call you a racist because I'm black. I will just, if I want to win every argument, call you a misogynist. Hey, you don't want to be misogynistic, so why would you say that? It's really important for people to comprehend that and so that we can remove that power from people. You know, I'm happy to hear your points, but the truth is the truth. And the truth is that Christ is king every minute of every day. And there's no way you can say that is offensive because it's a declaration of truth.
That's it. That's it. That's it. That's it. This works.
Yeah, I think I'm reminded when you asked that question of when Satan tempts Christ in the wilderness for the third time, he quotes scripture to our Lord. And he says, basically, bow down and worship me, but, I'll give you the kingdom of the earth, and he's not going to let anyone harm you because he'll send legions of angels to watch over you. The devil uses words masterfully. He is the master of deceit. He is the master of lies. And the weaponization of language is just another weapon. And this is the whole point. We can see it the whole time now. I mean, how many times, I don't know how many times to switch into politics for a second, but how many times can you be told that removing dead people from voter ballots is an enemy of democracy? It is truly remarkable that somehow we're told this. And everything is an enemy of democracy, and democracy is under threat whilst they're trying to keep people who don't exist on ballots. But it's the part of the weaponization of language, right? And this is the same with all these labels that we have these days. Nothing can be discussed because it must be anti-whatever, or it's racist, or whoever. And it's just complete nonsense. You have to be able to, the free dialogue of ideas is absolutely essential to establishing conversation. I mean, it's essential to function as a free society. We as Christians, of course, as Catholics, we must be unafraid to say the truth at any cost, because Christ says, you will be persecuted in my name, you will have to take up your cross for me and suffer. And that is what we must be unafraid to do. Mm-hmm. And of course, nowadays, there's more labels than ever before for traditional Catholics. If we hold fast to the truth, we are persecuted from within the church and without the church. So it doesn't matter where we're looking, we're going to get it. And that's kind of the point.
I mean, the good news truly is that if you do like I do and they've called you everything, there's just nothing left, you know? And so I just wanted to collect it all like Pokemon balls. Like, you're a self-hating black person, you're a racist, you're a transphobe, you're anti-Semitic. I'm like, great, yes, all those things, perfect. Now can I speak, you know?
Right.
And I'm there now. I've collected them all.
Yeah. Let me, that's a good, I like that. Yeah, I forgot about the Pokemon thing. Yeah. I'm going to switch gears a little bit because I know we don't have all night. I wish we did. This is so much fun. So, George, if you do me a favor, wave when you're getting close to
Sure.
needing to get out of here. But I wanted to pick your brain a little bit about, both of you are in Catholic Action in different ways. I don't know. I used Parler. I had great hope for it at the time, and I hope it comes back and gets strong. But you obviously are a person who's driven by the idea that we need to give free speech to people who are trying to say and do the right thing. And I think from what you said tonight, that means standing up for Christ and the church. What do you think, and both of you, if you could both take turns answering this, because you're actually in front of the camera doing this, is it a dismal prospect for the future, or is it What do you say to people who say, now, you know what, why are we always working with this defeatist attitude? For example, you're getting thrown off YouTube, whether you know it or not. You are, because I was there first. It's throwing me off a long time ago. So you know it's coming, it's inevitable. And yet there's this bizarre attitude among even our people, well, you're never going to leave YouTube. That's where it's all happening. Why would you get off YouTube? You're done if you get off YouTube. And I think it's really sad, because basically you're saying, I can't fight a war for Christ the King without teaming up with the enemies of Christ the King, which is what YouTube is, in my opinion. So what are our prospects? What do you think for the future, for you speaking out, and what's going to happen to you now? Do you have any future, or are you done? And what's going to happen? What do you think about, from the technology point of view? I'm fired up for the stuff that you're doing. I think we should just fight. We just started our own platform for the same reason. Let's start our own thing and see what happens. God might bless it, and we end up winning in the end. So if you could comment on both that, in front of the camera and behind the camera, technology part.
I think last year, beginning of last year, I was in such a different place, and it's funny because now people see the show and they're like, she's so happy. Like, what is going on? What has she taken? And the answer is the white pill. Like, first I took the red pill, and then you take the black pill, which is the doom and the gloom, and you're like, this is all terrible, and I've realized what's going on in the world. And you saw Neil was really in that place, Neil Oliver. He was just like, it's all evil and satanic, and we're never going to win. And then you take the Christ pill, and you're like, wait, no, we definitely are going to win, and this is amazing. And everything now, and it is so true what Father Witto said. He said, to be a Catholic, he just smiling, you will be persecuted, but you will be happy. And it's so, I don't even understand it. It's like magic, I'm every day fighting a new battle, and I'm just got a smile plastered on my face, and people calling, are you okay? I saw YouTube. I'm like, this is great. This is amazing. It's another challenge. And I just really trust the Lord in this. I really know that he wanted, I never questioned his timing. And there was a reason why he didn't want to reveal the truth of the Catholic faith to me until the exact moment he did, because he knew the persecution I would face, but he also knew that persecution wouldn't land, because their usual tricks didn't land, because I had 7 years of a podcast. People know me. Right. They actually know me, so they're not going to believe. And then she went crazy on Monday, And so it's been, I just have such positivity about it, because everything that they throw at us, I see as an opportunity. So we have been building our own platform in the background, because we always had that question mark about YouTube. Also had been prepared on the legal front for the YouTube battle. I'm a formidable opponent. I'm like a happy warrior. I'm the worst kind of warrior. I love it. I'm like, yes, we're fighting today, and we're going to win, because we're Team Christ, and of course we're going to win. And that drives them crazy. Like, my smiling drives them crazy. But yeah, see every challenge as an opportunity. Truly begin all of your prayers, as I do, with a list of what you are grateful for. And when you don't know why God has thrown a certain task your way, like I'm on, why today? Why are we kicking me off YouTube today? First thing you should do is thank him. First thing you should do in my prayer, I say, thank you, Lord, for kicking me off YouTube today. I know I don't know why you wanted to do this today, but I trust you, and I know that this is your plan. And when you truly believe that in your heart, and you're even grateful for the challenges, I can't explain to you the warmth and the happiness that you jump into every task and every conflict with.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, I think the early church started with a few men huddled in an upper room with the doors locked for fear of the Jews. And it grew into the medieval church. It grew into the church we have today. It conquered the whole world. The message of Christ conquered the whole world. And of course, that is the great irony of the gospel, is that he came with no armies. He was a carpenter from Nazareth, and yet the message of love conquers, the message of Christ's death, resurrection, conquered the whole world. And yet there was this, it would seem insurmountable. When they were gathered, when the apostles were gathered in that small room, they would have said, what are we doing? There definitely was, you even saw it in Doubting Thomas. I don't even believe he came back from the dead. I don't believe he was resurrected. And that's kind of, that's, the Lord puts us all in challenges at all times of our lives, but that's where a lot of the movement that we have right now is. And we are, Pope Benedict said it himself, as Pope Benedict XVI said it, we will become an apostolic church again. A smaller church, a church where the purity of faith is preserved, where the dogma and doctrine of the faith is maintained. And that is what we are moving rapidly towards as our Western civilization crumbles in real time before our eyes, as the disintegration of of the old Christendom really falls, is very apparent. It will become more painful. There's no doubt about it. And that will become more painful from a corporate perspective. It will become more painful from a societal perspective. It will become more painful for our children and our lives from financial perspectives and all the other ways that you can possibly imagine. It will become more painful. But at the end of the day, 1,000 years after Christ, the medieval church was ruling the whole of Europe in a temporal sense as well as a spiritual sense. Mm-hmm. Now, we may not be going back to that, but the point being is that there is a sense of growth. There is a sense of actually something, the mustard seed which is planted will eventually grow into the tree. And we just have to be persevering. We have to constantly be looking for ways to grow his kingdom. In the technology space, there are many terrifying things, I would say. I'm deeply involved in kind of many different areas of tech, and there are many frightening things. There are many people in tech who are very, very evil. But there are also many good people, and there are many people who still believe that that Christianity has a role to play. They may not be fully there yet with us, but they are on the path. And there are many people who see the increasing insanity that our society is moving towards and are drawn towards the truth. And those are the people that we have to try and bring with us. I'd also just say on your free speech point, because I think that's really, my opinions of this have changed over many years, and I ran Parler for a while, and that was a very interesting experience. But free speech is not a goal in and of itself. Mm-hmm. Free speech must serve the purpose of Christ. And actually free speech is it is a petri dish in which the conversation of Christ must happen. And this is why I fight for free speech, because I believe that in repressive regimes where free speech is not allowed, Christianity is crushed. You look at His Excellency, we had the privilege of spending a couple of days with him and hearing his story about the USSR and the Soviet Union. That is where we are headed towards, and that is a very frightening picture for the future, but in part because it crushes Christianity, it crushes Christ, it seeks to blot out Christ. And that's why we must preserve free speech, because it allows for the flourishing of the gospel. Not because free speech is just a great end in and of itself. It's great to have good conversations, of course, but we're there to actually advance the kingdom. That is the heart of free speech. And so it's really important that everything that we do serves that purpose, mm-hmm. and not another necessary ideological abstraction.
It's Just to follow up on that briefly, that's, in my opinion, such an important point, because all these so-called freedoms initially were introduced by Freemasonic operators who were trying to undermine the Catholic confessional states. Mm-hmm. And so we do find ourselves in a very ironic position. I'm a member of the press, and yet I'm out there championing for my freedom of the press. I actually don't believe in that, because you really can't use the press to undermine Christ or Christianity. But they said they're giving it to us. Of course, they're pulling it all away. But I think even if we make use of these things like freedom of speech, freedom of press, we should, as Catholics, be aware of their origins, and that it can be used. It was and has been used against the church. And now that the church has been so subjugated, they're even pulling back those so-called freedoms, like speech and press and everything else, because it was never real.
Well, what is freedom? Like, fundamentally ask yourself, what is freedom? Is it just the ability to do whatever you want? I think as believing Catholics in this room, we would all know that is clearly not the answer. The answer is not just to go and do whatever you want, because Paul writes in Galatians, you were slaves to sin. And we are sold the idea in this world that doing whatever you want, having sex with as many people as you want, having abortions, living in sin, doing whatever you want, is freedom. And that is what we are taught these days. And so as a result, when we say, what is freedom? We are actually, again, we come back to that fundamental principle. Are you aligned? Is your freedom really freedom in Christ? Or is your freedom really freedom to do whatever you want in sin. And those two paths we have to understand before we can even begin to comprehend the idea of freedom. And that's really important.
Absolutely. So I hope we have time for two more that both of you have to answer. And I'm going to invert things. The first one has to do with your children. The next one has to do with your marriage, because we have a lot of young people here who are pretty interested in your love story. Now, I'm not asking you to tell me everything about that, but whatever you care to share. But first I want to talk about your children, because I think one of the things that we all as parents fear the most is what happens if I'm too outspoken. I mean, who knows? What happens to my kids? What are they going to do to my family? And I always think about this story that is, we talk a lot about the early martyrs, of course, and the examples of the Christians in the Colosseum singing as their children are being fed to lions and all this. And from their sacrifice, the greatest civilization in the history of mankind is born, Christendom. But even much more recently, I was thinking about the story of a mother in Rwanda during the Troubles there. And this story always struck with me. And I want to just get you to comment, because you have young kids. I have young kids and now a grandchild as well. And what the story was that they were torturing the Christians in Rwanda. And there's this horrific but beautiful story about how a mother was dragged into a public square and her children were brought up in front of her and tortured and executed right in front of her, trying to break her. And the story that hit me the most was when her youngest, just a little 5-6-year-old baby girl, was being tortured. And rather than pleading for her life, the mother leans as close as she can get, and she starts saying to the child, "Oh my God, I am heartily sorry for having offended thee, and I detest all," working with the child through the act of contrition and the final prayers before she's killed. Now this is something none of us ever want to experience, obviously. But I think if we don't talk about that, like you're risking your career. A lot of people are risking their careers, and it's a dry form of martyrdom, And I think it's important to talk about what come before us was even worse, in terms of what happened to children. So I just want to know. I think everybody would like to know, when you have children, and that's your first responsibility, do you share stories like that? Do you make them prepared? I know they're very young, but what is your plan to sort of bring them into this idea that ultimately God will, I'm not saying God will ask you of this, but preparing them for the possibility that you should be willing to die rather than deny him?
Yeah, we've gone for the easy questions tonight. I think I'm reading the Gospel of Matthew right now in the mornings, and there is a passage in Matthew, I think it's in Matthew chapter 15, but I'm going to be told that that's wrong. But it's, unless the man who loves his wife, the man who loves his children more than me is not worthy to be called by my name. The woman who loves her husband, who loves her children more than me, is not worthy to be called by my name. It is an unbelievably hard passage, and it's funny you mention a story like that, because the rest of the day I'm thinking about this passage and I'm thinking, wow, I really love her. And I really love my kids. I really love them. Like, I would do anything to protect them. Anything. But I have to love Christ more than her and then them. And that is, and then you start really, we were talking about this the other night, when you start, I was thinking about my oldest son, and I said to Candace, I just said, when you really begin to think about the love that you have for your children, and when I think about the love that I have for my son, my oldest son, and then you think about God and Christ, and the love between the Father and the Son, and the fact that the Father would send the Son to die for us so that we can live, it brings you to tears. It is completely overwhelming, because the love of the Father and the Son and the Spirit which bonds them is so much greater than any human love we can possibly have. That's why I come back to your first question, or first question to me, is we have to steep our children in the faith from the earliest age, that they must understand that to love God is more valuable than to love me, than to love her, than to love anything else. It must be at the heart of everything, because one day that day may come, and they may say, may hold a gun to my children's head and say, if you do not say that you love the regime more than you love your dad, we will shoot your dad, or vice versa. And they have to be able to say, no, we love Christ more than we love the regime, than our father, or whatever it is. And that it's a staggeringly difficult place to find yourself. I mean, it just is for anyone, and I think everyone would agree with that. But it must be done.
I think he said things perfectly. I would just add to that, is one of the things that I've been grappling with is there's so many people who have the perspective that they love their children and for that reason they're quiet. But that's exactly how you end up in the scenario that you're speaking about. It's because you have people who know the truth and they say nothing, right? Because they're fearful. They have all of these other fears of, well, I love my kids and I don't want to lose my job because I'm making money and I'm doing that for my kids and I'm sacrificing this for my kids. You know, I have these conversations often with my sister because there's just trans mania happening up in Connecticut, and she's got to do all sorts of things to keep her job, like correctly labeling or incorrectly identifying someone who's clearly a woman as a man, if that's how they identify that day, or she gets dragged into HR. And I had a conversation with her about that. You know, like, you're telling lies every day. You know it's wrong. You come to me and you vent about it. And to really get to the nucleus of why somebody does that, it's because they think that they're being a better parent by providing for them, by going along with the thing that is actually a tremendous evil. And so for me, I have grown louder. Like, people said, you know, when you become a mother, it'll soften you. And I was so looking forward to that. But it actually hardened me. It did. It hardened me because I realized now I was speaking about these things and I didn't have the weight of what it meant to be a mother, right? And recognizing that how much my silence could potentially cost my children in the future. And I really try to underscore that to moms that are following my podcast. Like, we have to use our voices, our platforms. We have to be the mama bears, because we will very quickly end up in that world because people are silent about the truth. And so for me, the answer is very easy. If you are putting Christ first, you are putting truth first, and we cannot be silent on the matter of truth, or it will impact our children.
And it's been my experience too that the children understand, and there's, again, the sense of the crusade is a very powerful thing in their lives. I mean, I always think, but there's a human element and there's a spiritual element. I love that scene from I just talked about it recently, Robert Bolt's play The Man for All Seasons, where Thomas More is in the Tower of London. He's gonna give his life, you know, for the church, for the papacy. And he has this moment of real human weakness, and it's all based on the fact that he doesn't know for sure if his wife and beloved children understand. And I love that because it makes him so incredibly human. He didn't just hop off a holy card and everything's perfect. He loves his kids, you know, he loves his family life and everything else. And he's like, if you don't understand, I don't know that I'm going to make a good martyr. If you do, I might make a pretty good martyr. So I kind of like that agreement that you make with children, especially as they grow older. If the worst comes to worst, well, we're in this together, and this is the point and purpose of it all. So thank you for sharing that. So I promised one more, and it's not just a curiosity question. I really fear for the future of Western civilization. You've done such great work on the transgender stuff and the IVF stuff, and you know, just the basic idea of what is happening to marriage right now is really quite terrifying, because there's so few good role models left. And you can divorce, yes, of course, but in the Catholic Church you have the annulment industry, which is just, you know, Catholic divorce, and I think it's a great abuse. So the indissolubility of marriage is under attack everywhere, even at the highest levels of the Catholic Church. And so marriage becomes, if that's the nucleus of society and it's under attack from all directions all the time, I think when you have a young couple, not quite relatively young, compared to me anyway, who's clearly had a marriage that is not only bearing fruit in terms of children, but also a marriage that didn't just go on hold and opt out of the fight, out of the crusade, even after the children began to come. Can you tell me something about, or tell us, like, first of all, what do you think of this idea of marriage being under full-scale attack everywhere? How important is marriage as the nucleus of society? What hope do we have if marriage isn't restored? And what would you say to young people today on how to reassert an importance, a gravitas to marriage as the human solution, the beginning of sanctity between two people? And it's under attack, but we also have to look at it as the solution. What would you say to kind of encourage young people?
No, you go first. No, you go first. Well, that's an interesting one when it comes to our marriage. Our marriage is not like every other marriage because it has been, I would say, we have been forged in battle fire, is what I would say about much of the past 5 years. We've been married just over 5 years, and that battle fire that we've been through together has created, I would say, an unbreakable strength, because Christ sits at the... When Candace became a Catholic, it raised our marriage to the level of a sacrament, and of course Christ became even more enmeshed in what we do as a couple, and it aligned us from a spiritual perspective and a singular faith, the true faith, which meant that at that point, you know, there was an even bigger bond between us and a strength between us. We have, I would say, you know, it is unusual, the kind of things that we go through. I would say on a weekly basis, it's like, okay, you know, we've got the Daily Mail writing something about, and then you've got kind of like, okay, this congressman attacked you over here. It's just not kind of your regular pattern of like, it's Tuesday morning, you know, do you want like, you know, cereal or pancakes? It's like, okay. And so there's quite a lot, you know, we've just been through a lot together. And actually, you know, we're very different. Candace is fire, I'm ice, and that kind of works. But also the tests that the Lord has put us through have created this bond between us now, which is just, it's very, very strong. I don't say unbreakable because I don't really know what that means, but it is an incredibly strong bond that binds us now. And I think that in some ways is what I would say to young couples today. First of all, align yourself in the true faith. Because when you do that, everything else works. It finds its format. It finds its role in life. There is the spiritual fatherhood of the priesthood, and there is the fatherhood of the family. And there is the motherhood in the family too. And that unity is perfect. And Candace and I try our best. We obviously fail because we are humans. But we try our best to both fulfill those roles gently, lovingly, graciously, and with always the fruits of the Spirit, trying to be at the heart of everything we do, which is love, goodness, kindness, gentleness, patience, faithfulness, self-control. You know, it's easy to roll off the tongue. It's incredibly difficult to do, as we all know. But you know, because we've been through a lot, and because we try and put those things at the heart of what we do, I think it has created a marriage which is both joyous, and that is one of the things that really matters, is to have true joy, not just happiness, but true eternal joy sitting at the heart of what you do. Actually, joy is only found in Christ. And if you have that at the heart of everything you do, the rest of it is just, I'm not going to say a walk in the park, but it's much, much, much easier.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if everyone in this room knows, but George and I have a very rare love story, and we met, laid eyes on each other for the first time in London, and then were engaged 18 days later. Yeah, it's a kind of unbelievable in the retrospect, and it's something that could have only come from God, you know, moving in our lives. And when people would ask me, obviously, could you imagine calling your parents? I mean, come on. Explaining to your parents, and I'll never forget that first dinner with his parents, and he's like, yeah, I'm not going to lead with we're engaged because it's the first time you're seeing them, and I've known you for 18 days, but I'm going to then tell my dad 2 days after. And so everyone was just, have you guys completely lost the plot, you know? Fair. And I say now I will be a full hypocrite if my daughter comes to me and says she met a guy and is getting married 18 days later. But when people would ask the question of how did you know, I can't explain it. Like I just looked at George and I just knew that it was going to be okay. I didn't know what that thing was that was going to be okay, but I knew that like there was just this spiritual pull in a way that I had never felt it before. And what's so funny is when I met him, he was sitting next to me at dinner, and he didn't say a word. It was just his face. Like I looked at him, and I was like, "This is my person." And when he asked me to marry him 18 days later, I just said, "What took you so long?" You know?
The great ones make it look easy.
And since then, it's so funny because he was then thereafter pulled back into his Catholic faith, and I was a Protestant, and so many things have happened, and all of it was inevitable, and it's still difficult for me to really comprehend how much God knew that I needed George, how God knew that George needed me, how everything that I was missing in my life just came into focus when I met him. And it was also, if I could describe it as a feeling, it was just this sense of relief. Like I just knew that it would be okay. Like everything was going to be okay. And that security has only strengthened. It's so funny because very recently when there was this media obsession with destroying me because they don't like people to exist outside of their control. You work for one of the networks, you work for one of the podcast networks, and that means that you can be modified, you can be controlled because there's money. And they were getting really desperate. I mean, my PR person called me and he's like, they just had someone take me out for drinks to try to prod and ask me questions about your marriage. Like wow. They realized that was something that kept me fortified. So they knew how much a strong marriage meant. They knew why is she so confident? Well, because she has things that we need to destroy. And that's going to be the faith. We're going to write these articles about her saying Christ is king, and that didn't work, and that backfired, and so they have then said, okay, it's the marriage, the mystery of George. Wow. He must be the person. He's the Catholic. He brought her into this. And I loved hearing that from the PR agent. I loved hearing that they know that we have something that isn't theirs. It doesn't belong to them, right? Christ is at the center of that. You can't impact this. And so there's days where there's the expression, this is my better half. There are days when he's just the whole, like he's just the whole. And I'm just like, I know I can't, and he's the whole. And he just keeps everything steady. And it is the greatest blessing. And like marriage truly has been the greatest blessing in my life. And I will never stop thanking God for that.
Candace does this deliberately because she knows I'm English and I can't take compliments. For those of you who aren't aware, the English are not very good with dealing with compliments. But I would just, everything she said I completely agree with, and it's mutual. There are days when she's the whole as well, and we build off each other's strength. I'd also just say one thing which I thought, just when she was answering there, it's go to the Holy Family. As traditional Catholics, we must look to the saints, and Saint Joseph and the Blessed Mother must also be our examples who we must follow. I remember praying to Saint Joseph. There was a very difficult situation earlier this year. I won't go into the whole details, but it was another media attack, as you can probably imagine. And I visited the shrine in France. We happened to be in the south of France, and I visited the shrine where St. Joseph is recorded in tradition as the only place that he has spoken. And I prayed and I offered up. We did the Litany of St. Joseph. I was with a friend of mine and a very holy priest. And I just said, St. Joseph, I don't come to you frequently. That's my fault. And I need to offer this problem up to you. And the next day, the problem was gone. It was a direct intercessory prayer. And it's just a very powerful reminder that we are not alone. We have the saints to go to. We have examples to go to. This is the great beauty of the church. When I first came into it, I realized the depth of it. I had reached the bottom of the intellectual puddle of Protestantism by the time I was 13. And now I am 34.
It took me to 33, but okay. It took me a little more time.
And now I am 34, and I feel, and I read the lives of the saints, the patristics, the church fathers, and I feel like I haven't even begun, because the depth of our faith, the depth of our church is so deep, and we can get lost in it.
Amen.
I'm reminded that sometimes it's ironic how God brings people together. My wife, I met her in college, Christendom College, and she comes up to me and she says, "Oh, so you're Michael Matt?" And I'm thinking, "Yeah, I got this. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Thanks for noticing." And she goes, she says, "So your dad is the one that runs that Catholic newspaper, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely." And she goes, "Do you have any idea how many Friday nights my father made me stay home and read your father's stupid newspaper before I go out?" It was the beginning of the beautiful. So anyway, I know, I would like just so many more. How about this? Last question. Is there any chance that we can get you to come back again?
Of course.
Yeah.
There's absolutely. Wait. Just to clarify, the conference or the pilgrimage? What do you mean?
You're a one. That's a one-off. You know, you're fine with the pilgrimage. You did it. Your feet are
I
still.
will do it again. I know I will. There's something that I immediately was like,
That's
I
great,
think I
because
gotta do this again.
usually after 2 years we do it on our hands. So that would be fun. Yeah, come back. Seriously, everything that we hoped in taking what I consider a very, very minimal risk in bringing us together and asking if you'd join us. All our expectations have been so exceeded, and I know you're going to go through a lot. You just talked about what it's like. It's not cereal and pancakes anymore. There's a lot of things to be thinking about. I want you to think of us, the Catholic Identity Conference, as we always talk about Unite the Clans. Like, you guys have a home here. We're praying for you. We're so supportive of what you're doing. I don't know how far you can go with this, proclaiming the Kingship of Christ to so many people as you're doing, but we are just so happy and proud to stand with you and to do whatever we can, even if it's just praying for the success of both of you in taking this message of the proclamation of the social kingship of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ to the world. God bless you for doing it.
Thank you.